though, I feel like when a man can even admit that he's cheated on you, and that's a way of holding yourself accountable. Like, I think that I even had this conversation with my mom. I think when a man gets caught cheating, I think at that point you got sloppy because you said you had no idea.
I didn't, and I don't know what it's like to be on that other side to where you actually catch someone cheating, because like I told Robert, I certainly would not have been as committed to staying in that relationship if I would have had to discover your infidelity. But the fact that he came to me when he didn't have to, because he was it was like what, 2-3 years past, about 3 years past the actual act of his infidelity.
Of my last act of infidelity.
Your last act of infidelity. Well, I'll let you share that, and then I'll help to bring perspective to my thought process when you provided your disclosure.
Like, what led you to even wanting to come clean? Like, were you scared? Like, just tell us.
My conscience. So my conscience first and foremost. But there are several reasons, but in no particular order. I think at the top of that list was my conscience, and knowing that I had just 2 months married. Married December 10th, 99, and so here we are, March 18th, 2001. She's thinking she has a good man. I know I have a good woman. I have a loyal woman, and so it was eating me alive. Interestingly enough, Cherrika, I called your dad to pick me up. Yeah. So
to pick you up
from the hotel, because I was on the road. I was doing a stage play called Sugar Daddy, and I think I mentioned that to you before with Ralph Tresvant, and we had people come. Prince came to the show. We were eating with Patti LaBelle. I didn't even do that.
I don't think you ever mentioned that one to me.
Sugar Daddy.
Yeah.
We had people out on. It was Ollie Woodson from the Temptations. It was Bernadette Standers. I played her boy toy. That was them from Good Time. And Ollie Woodson. Ralph Tresvant from New Edition, Christopher Martin from Kid and Play, and I was out there on the road with them, and I was miserable because I had all of these. I had the secret. I was a cheater, and that was something that, because the household I grew up in a household with hustlers, gangsters, pimps, and so on and so forth. So that dysfunction just basically I latched onto that dysfunction.
Validated it. It made it seem
it validated, right.
Yeah.
And
that's normal. This is what
it was normal to me. And so it was like, if you only have one woman, then you're a punk.
Yeah.
But that one woman you have, you just got to make sure that she doesn't find out about the other girls you mess around with.
She your man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There you go. And so on the road doing Sugar Daddy, March 18th, 2000. So we got married December 10th, 99. And so it was a couple of months later, because Nevaeh was on her way. So.
Well, we didn't know at that time. We had just conceived her.
Oh, wow.
We had just conceived her.
Yeah,
Okay.
So I didn't even know. I don't know. I knew I was. No, I was very pregnant during Sugar Daddy.
Yeah, December, January, February, March, April, May, June,
because
July.
So and Nevaeh, what, 2 years apart, right?
3 years.
3
apart.
years.
3 years apart.
3 years.
So
Having the same age.
So you were 2 months pregnant at that time.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And then when I cheated, it was March 18th, 1999. I mean, 2000, on my paternal grandmother's birthday. It's crazy how that happened, but I just remember, stuck in my head, and ended up.
You felt you were remorseful. You felt that guilt. You felt, when you remember those things.
Yeah. While it was happening.
That's your spirit was convicting you, already knowing that you were doing something that you had no business doing.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I was trying to also, and had, I wasn't planning on cheating. I wanted to see if I had it like that. Like, let me see if I still got it like that.
And most men go and seek that validation. Yeah. It's getting boring. When you're doing what's right get boring. So you got to go and see.
Well, especially with the insecurities I had. I never really said I stopped cheating. I just cheated less at that time. Like it was less and less. And then when I got married, I was like, okay, all right, now it's gotta cease.
Right.
And so, a couple of months into the marriage, And one of my castmates invited me out because one of his friends came. One of his friends came to town from Jacksonville, and she brought a friend with her. He was like, "Man, you want to just go hang out?" We went and hung out. Got a hotel room, and then next thing you know, I had inserted for about 3 or 4 strokes, 3 or 4, and I just got up and I was like, okay. So I proved to me what I wanted to prove in that regard, but at the same time, I felt like the scum of the earth.
Wow.
So yeah, I just felt like I was a disease. You know? It was an awful feeling, and I got up and went to the mirror in the hotel room, and I was just looking at myself, and I said, okay, this mission that I'm on, you know, I started on this mission when I lost my mom in May 9th, 93.
Wow.
And my purpose, my goal was to become a better person, become the best human being that I could be. And so I knew that wasn't a part of the game plan. That's not it. And I'm like, okay, so, and I said, as I was on this journey of transformation, I said, if I can't live to please God and live to honor my mom who passed before me, then I don't want to live, you know? Like, I don't care to live anymore.
Wow.
And so that was a pivotal moment in my life where I was like, I'd just rather be dead than to feel this way.
Wow.
And from that moment on, my conscience was just bothering me. And we had a break. We had a layover. We had a break from the show. We had like a week off or something like that. And so they brought us back to town. I called Reno before that, and I said, yeah, man. I said, I need you to pick me up or do me a favor, something like that. He didn't know that I didn't tell Bing, that I didn't tell Leta that I was coming to town. And so he was like, what's up? And he called Leta.
I remember that call.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. And he was like, where's Rob or something like that. And I was like, Rob? I said, he's not in town. And he was like, oh. I don't remember how he handled it. But he was like, all right, Ben. He was like, well, let me call you back. I might be confused about some stuff. Let me just figure this out. Or something he said. And I was just puzzled. I was like, why would he think that? You know?
Yeah.
So. So Reno called me, and I explained to him what was going on. I said, I just need you to pick me up and take me to the hospital because during that interaction, I think I contracted urethritis. I think I contracted something. I actually did contract.
You did?
Yeah, I think during that time. Because Reno picked me up and took me to the hospital. And I got the penicillin.
I thought that was beforehand.
Well, that was at UGA.
Oh my goodness.
That was at UGA. But you remember I told you he took me, yeah. And so, but I was like, I didn't know for sure.
Vaguely, I do.
But my mom was playing tricks on me. I wasn't sure. I just felt a sensation.
You felt wrong.
Well, I'm talking about I felt a burning sensation. I was like, I said, what's going on? And I knew I was coming home. And Leta started calling me saying, yeah, Reno just called me and said you were supposed to come to town or something. I said, huh? And I didn't lie to her. I never lied to her, but I circumvented the truth.
Yeah.
And I said, what would I said,
a lot
what
of
would
men do that. A lot of men
He
do
was a
that.
master at manipulation.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I said, I said, why would Reno say that? I said, let me check with Reno and see.
Yeah, why would he say
You know, that type of thing, playing games or whatever. And so
it was just that guilt though.
Yeah.
Because you could have even said you came home early or something.
Yeah.
It's just when you know you're wrong, you gotta be right some kind of way. Like, oh God.
Well, here's the thing on top of that though, Cherrika, was I didn't want to say I came home earlier because we hadn't been intimate in a while, and I knew as soon as she saw me, she would have been like, "Oh, bring it on, bring it on."
Yeah.
Right?
And you don't know what you about to bring on.
Exactly.
What you about to bring on.
Exactly. So I was like, I got to go to the hospital because what am I gonna say if she's like, "What you doing? Why are you stalling?
Like,
what are you?" And so I went to the hospital. I went to the hospital, Atlanta Medical Center.
Oh, okay.
And got some penicillin. And then I went to my grandmother's and just stayed there. And then met her at her job. When I met you at your job, and I said I wanted to surprise you at your job. And so
it
then
turned
we went
into
to
I was trying to surprise you.
which I did surprise her. I did surprise her. So we went and had lunch, and then we hung out throughout the day. We hung out, went to the Waffle House, ran into some comedian at the Waffle House. We went to the Waffle. I was trying to kill as much time as.
Remembering details.
Yeah.
I thought we went to a restaurant out up 85 or something like that, to a restaurant up that way. Maybe there was another time, but I do recall you coming out to the job.
I was trying to kill as much time as possible.
And at that moment, where like, if you recall, like when you went to pick her up and everything, did you still feel that guilt, or were you like, because it's so on the other side, because most women are the ones that experience the infidelity for the most part. We never know, like, if you feel, because I feel like your spirit was convicted early. A lot of men can go their entire life living that life and not really even, you question if they have a conscience, because they would never like even feel, like you said, you felt disgusted with yourself.
Right.
We know there are habitual cheaters in the world where people can do that and go and smile in a woman's face and act like nothing happened. So in that moment, like, were you battling internally with what you just did? Like when you went to surprise her, or how were you feeling, if you recall your feelings?
It was a great question too. It was a never-ending battle for me. There were moments where maybe if we were with the kids or something and celebrating something for a split second, for a moment, a few minutes, that I didn't think about it. But then when it got quiet, went back home, on the drive home, whenever it was quiet, my conscience was screaming. Right, I was tormented 24/7, and I think I had breakouts and different things. Then I had breakouts, acne. I was stressing. I was constantly stressed. And we sit at the dinner table. It was hard for me to have the kids at the table. It was hard for me to look at her at dinner. So I'm trying to eat dinner. We talk. I'm like.
And he's talking about fast forward, because he said kids at the table. By then I had Nathan,
right, on
our way to having Easy. So it was, again, like 2.5, 3 years that
so that was weighing on your heart for years, basically.
Heavy.
So you don't really remember that moment, like afterwards, after the hospital, like going to pick her up for work and stuff. It was just that time period for you that was just like a depressing part of your life.
It was very depressing. When I was even, here's the thing, Cherrika. I had an opportunity to go to the Palisades. I think that was Prince's place, right? The Palisades, or whatever they called his spread out in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. So we were doing a show in Minnesota, and Prince came to the show, and he invited us all out to his place. And many of the cast members went, and I didn't. How do you pass up an opportunity to go hang out with Prince and act the friend that I hung out with, went to the hotel with, and cheated with I don't want to say that,
Yeah.
You may try to research him and look him up. but you know exactly, you know who it was.
Somebody else.
He was singing back to back with Prince. He was on the stage, and they called me while they were out there, and my roommate called me and said, "Man, such and such is singing with Prince right now. He's back to back. They're on the stage singing the blues." So that was a major opportunity that I just didn't even partake in. Because I was so depressed.
Like you weren't worthy.
I was.
Like,
exactly.
why should I go? Or
exactly.
if I go, will I cheat again?
I didn't
will
feel
I
worthy.
Somebody?
The cheating part, that's another part. We were just talking about this yesterday. And the day before, remember I said I used to have nightmares. Mm-hmm. Early on, like right after I stopped cheating, I would have nightmares, wake up, that had dreams that I had been cheating.
Wow.
And oh my God. And so over time, as the months and years went by, then the nightmares subsided. Because I felt more confident in who I was and in me.
And would you say that it subsided before your disclosure or after? Did the nightmares subside before?
Oh, no. Nightmares were not subsiding before my confession.
Right.
Oh, no.
Right.
Oh, no.
Which, as we mentioned, the situation, the ordeal happened in, was it 2001?
2000.
Oh, 2000.
It was 2000 because Nan was born 2000.
2000,
June
and then it was
22.
2003 when you disclosed.
When I disclosed.
And when you disclosed,
How did
I was
that-
very pregnant.
Yeah, I wanted
very
to know,
pregnant.
how did that make you feel?
Mm.
Like when the news was brought to you. You were pregnant at the time he told you everything?
I was.
Noticeably
I was,
pregnant.
Cherrika. I was like in
Wow.
my third trimester. We working on our third child by then.
Mm-hmm.
So Heaven was 6, Nebby was 3, and Easy was on his way out of the bun. So, and we had opened our first business, so we had a costume shop that we were operating. So we were under, and I won't say a lot of stress, but we just had a lot going on at that time in our lives. And he was, I could tell that he was in a certain space because he was like an angel. He had been like ideal like for the last couple of years, but primarily that last year as I was carrying Easy, it just seemed like his spirit, for me it seemed like his spirit was just in a humble space.
Wow.
He was in a very humble space. Like there wasn't anything that he wouldn't do that I needed. It was like he was just always there, and
Wow.
he was very consistent and very present, you know, very, very present. And I appreciated that.
Yes.
I didn't understand that it was coming from him having something so heavily on his heart. He felt like the least I could do is be in, right, exactly. And so we were in a very great space as I knew it in our relationship. Just a lot going on, you know, business wise, but he decided to set us all down. He called me to the living room, called the kids to the living room. I didn't know what was going on, you know, so we had the girls sitting there on the couch, and he just kind of spilled his heart. He was like, Daddy has something that I have to tell y'all, I gotta get this off of my heart. You know, God has put on my heart to disclose this, and I'm so sorry. That I hurt my family. Binky, I understand if you want to walk away, you know, if this is something that you can't handle, but you know, and of course, and I'm of course paraphrasing the order that he said things, but he basically said that, you know, I cheated when I was on the road at Sugar Daddy. Daddy did this, and he actually gave enough details to where the kids could understand.
Was to all
to
of
the
y'all,
family, not just me, but to our
So
children.
as the head of the household, I'm coming to take my responsibility and let everybody know I messed up. Wow.
And in that moment, he made a commitment to us and to God that on his life he would never do it again. If I would have him, if I chose to continue with him and give him another opportunity to make it right, that he would never make that mistake again. And it was one of the most difficult days of my life, right? Because it was that just, you know, becoming aware of the gravity of this crossroad that we were at in our relationship, but also, you know, of course, always trying to be a woman who stands on faith, right, and who walks by God and understands that my reasoning, my purpose for being here is something greater than for myself, and not making the wrong or a selfish decision in that moment,
Right.
you know.
And
I appreciate him for confessing in front of our kids, because I understood the weight of that. I understood that made it more real, and that helped me to understand the seriousness of his commitment.
Right.
But I was also resentful that he did it with our kids, right? Because it made it harder for me to make a personal decision to walk away. Because I had my daughter sitting here, you know, hearing this as well. And so bringing us together as a family forced me to make a family decision and not a personal decision.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
definitely
And so I thank God for that, because, you know, obviously it was the right decision.
Right.
But in that moment, I don't know if my decision would have been different if my children weren't there. I don't know if my decision would have been different if I weren't pregnant. You know? So I was thankful and resentful all at the same time.
Wow.
And that's what made it so heavy for me to deal with.
Wow.
But what I can say, and what I knew about him, you know, after, you know, we had so many other discussions leading up to this, even about things in our past, was that it was very clear to me that he wasn't a liar, right? One says that if you find a cheater, you find a liar, right? That goes hand in hand. This man was a walking contradiction of that.
Wow.
He really was.
Wow.
A cheater can stand separately from someone who is not honest, right? And to be honest, you would expect that that means to tell the truth, right? To tell the truth. But not sharing the truth when it's not asked.
That's true, honestly.
Does that make you a liar if you don't tell your truth to someone that doesn't ask and that you don't feel comfortable disclosing your truth to? So, there's that conundrum there. But for me, it was enough that he was honest enough to never lie to me about the details of what he did. And when I asked him things, it was my responsibility to make sure that I got to the root of what was really going on. And I just appreciate that in that moment, he gave me all of the freedom and the leverage to ask all of the questions, to walk away at any time, to do whatever I needed to do to resolve what I was feeling. And, constantly checking in on me and with me to make sure that I was okay, And so it was a very difficult place to be in, but if he were not the man that he is, with all of his flaws and all of his imperfections, based off of what he knew to be the right way to be as a man, from what he had been exposed to and what he learned, I just appreciated the man that he
Vowed to be.
he became, that he became through it all. And the man, like you said, that he vowed to be moving forward. So it was something. It was something, Cherrika.
And these stories are so important and need to be said because we live in such a society where make a decision and if a person do this, you do that. Like we it's good to be strong minded, like you said, and to have standards and do and to real life know what you will and will not tolerate. However, the very thing that you were resentful of him stating it in front of your daughters, to me, it gave them a sense of real life. Because it's so important, even for kids. Like I tell people all the time, they think that when we come from married households, like that we have a fairy tale. Oh, your daddy just do everything for you, and you just think your daddy is great. This great man. Like, no, we actually see the behind the scenes of our dads. We see the behind the scenes of our parents' relationships, and it's important that we see that, because when it's time for you to get in your own relationship, you're more graceful, and that's how God intended us to be. God didn't intend us to make selfish decisions in life, especially when you have a covenant with God.
That's right.
So it took a lot, I know, for him to even admit that in front of his children, because now you're gonna walk around, you just finished one thing on your back where you're thinking, oh God, I feel so bad and I feel unworthy. Now it's like, now I gotta walk around and see how my kids looking at me and see how my wife looking at me. And now, and if you overthink like me, it's like, are they looking at me differently? Do they think I'm less than? Do I need to open my phone in front of them? Do I need to give everybody my passcode? So that it puts everybody in an awkward situation and an unfortunate situation. But I think it is good that everybody is aware, because this is real life. You don't want your daughters to think that, as a firm believer of everybody don't cheat, you still don't want your daughters to think that a situation will just be perfect, because then when they go out in the real world and they date people, you're going to experience something that you think, oh, this is not normal. No, let me evaluate the situation and see, do I need to leave or do I stay? Like
Absolutely.
You said, you were pregnant and you had daughters already. That's a different situation than somebody leaving their boyfriend that they just
Absolutely.
have a lease, apartment lease with, and it's just them, the boyfriend and the dog. You can break that lease and you can
Absolutely.
and you can get out of there.
Absolutely.
But when we're talking about a covenant and a vow that we made with the Lord, and then we brought other beings into this world
That's
that didn't
right.
ask to be here,
That's right.
my mindset and my decision making may be a little different. And that's why I
Absolutely.
encourage young girls to not just say, oh, if I was her, if I was this, I would do this. You don't know what you would do because you ain't lived life to know what you would do.
And you shouldn't. I mean, I think you shouldn't put constraints on your life in that regard. You should allow your life to just kind of flow with what you're going through in the moment, because it's in those moments that you can only make the best decision for you in that space. And when you have, of course, when you have children involved, like for us and what we came through, our upbringing, both of us not having our fathers in the home, Robert barely having his mom, there to raise him, and me seeing my mom as a single mom who went through so many different relationships, so much domestic abuse and all these other things. It was like I had to weigh understanding that this is a great man. He's not perfect, but he's a great man. He's a great father.
Right.
He's a great business, he has a great head on his shoulders, and I know that he's going to be a rock and a solid presence for my daughters in their lives. And what do I want to make a decision that repeats a cycle to where they have to grow up in a world, in a space to where they don't have their daddy in their house every day? Now, I know that he's going to be there for them, but it's not going to be the same, not having their father in their home. And so, for me, it was, again, taking a step back from what I wanted and what I needed and making a decision about what my children needed first and what was best for us as a family. And what I felt in that moment was, I have to at least try.
Exactly.
I have to give this an opportunity to see where it goes and how it evolves.
Right.
And, a lot of prayer. Oh my God, Cherrika.
So.
Talking about praying my heart out and asking God why. I think that was the first and only time that I felt that God defied me. I felt that God removed his hands away from me, away from my life, and just allowed something to happen that was that devastated me to my core. And I couldn't understand it. So I was angry that God allowed that to happen. It wasn't until we grew and moved through it that I had more of an understanding of why. It was necessary for his evolution. It was necessary for our evolution, and it was necessary for what we needed to be a family that was solid.
Right.
And God only knows, you don't know what things are, helping a child evolve and help their maturation and their growth until you actually see it on the other side. But for me, it's like, you have to do the best with what you have. You have to make the best decisions in that moment. And not only that, but you have to make decisions that are steeped in God, that are steeped in, what is the right thing to do, not what is the selfish thing to do. And so in doing that, I feel like, our lives evolved as God expected.
And not to mention,
us.
this was not like your typical, oh, he cheated on me situation, because we, as people that say, oh, a society that say all men cheat, what man come and confess what he's done and vow to change and actually show you change behavior? That's very rare, and that's why I encourage people not to listen to like the outside voices and also just the generalization of advice online, because every situation and every relationship is different.
Yes.
Your husband is not the next person's husband. Like your boyfriend is not the next person's boyfriend. So you know something about your situation that other people can't know because they're not behind the scenes in your relationship. So what you decide to do for you as a woman does not make you less than a woman. Your mistake as a man does not make you less of a man. It's what that partnership and that what you all grew through and go through and grow through is what make you a unit and what's making you a force and making you powerful, and that is serving as a great example to your children, because I think we tear down the woman that stays too much when you don't know what she's staying for, what she's staying through, and why, and the change behavior she's seen. But that's not your job to prove to people that, oh, he's different. No, you know that that's all that matters. You know that you changed, and that's all that matters. And y'all know that y'all love each other unconditionally, and at the end of the day, it's a great marriage, and it's a commendable marriage. And that's the reality that our generation and our society don't see, because like you said, a lot of people don't grow up with their parents. So a lot of people have a misconstrued perception of how relationships really go. Not saying that every relationship go through the same thing, but every relationship go through something. Every successful marriage and married person I talk to has gone through a point where they probably even separated or broke up. Like, and people just say, "Oh, I love their relationship." They done been through some stuff, but you wouldn't know. And you think that you're gonna get this great relationship that's just gonna be perfect, and that's not real life.
Absolutely not.
It's not real life.
Where the camera? It ain't perfect. Period. We've had a lot of situations that have been devastating to our core, even outside of, the infidelity thing. He nailed
That can
being past that, and and we've definitely evolved so much since then, both of us. But it still does not make our marriage in any regard perfect, and we have a lot of moments to where we're just like, you know what? But at the end of the day, when you have, first of all, because we have God in our center, we always know where to come back to, and we understand that our mission is so much greater than us as individuals, and we can do it so much better together. And we just resolve and decide. We make the decision every day. Every day we make the decision that this is what we want. We choose each other.
And that's what love is. Love is not a feeling. Love is a decision to wake up and choose each other over and over again.
Beautiful.
And I love you all's marriage, and I'm so happy and proud. And you can just tell, like, even though we don't know the outside looking in, when you know somebody is changed and they're devoted to each other, it's evident. And I think it's very evident with the both of you.
Cherrika B Talkin.
And not only does Cherrika be talking, Leta be talking too. Both of y'all be talking.
He be over here like,
let me say this.
The stuff she be saying, let me get my dictionary.
If
I don't know, Cherrika. Really love
I
that.
know, this is beautiful, but if I may add one thing to that very traumatic moment when I sat down with you and the kids the night before, and I think that was the most painful, even considering my upbringing in the hood and how I lived in. I think that was the most pain I had ever caused anybody ever in my entire life.
That's right.
And the night before, and I think that's because we were talking about it the other day, the PTSD that I might have caused you. It gave me some trauma too, because of all the pain that I saw she was dealing with. And she didn't mention that part of it, and I think that she kind of blocked it out.
You know, I thought of that too, because the decision to stay as a woman too, whether you overthink or not, is always in the back of your mind. Like, what is he doing? What is it like? And sometimes even like, is he playing a game? Like, is he trying to give me a decision to stay to leave, to see like, am I going to leave? Am I strong enough to leave? You know, like as a woman, sometimes you battle with those little quiet voices, the still voices in your head when deciding whether to stay or not.
You know what? And I'm glad you mentioned that, because and you mentioning the night before, because I had, like you said, I had totally like put that into the back of my brain. I remember the closet incident, but was it that you disclosed to me that night, and then that next morning was when we brought the kids down?
The next morning, yes.
Okay, yes. So that
was
night, no, that's right. So that night we were in bed, and you woke me up out of my sleep. He woke me up out of my sleep that night. And when he told me, I literally went in my, and that was when I had that like coming to God moment of, look, I need you to talk me through this, because I don't understand this level of pain. I don't understand this level of just betrayal. And I went in the closet and had a moment to where I lost my literal mind. I think I may have pulled everything down in the closet, tore the closet up, had this, like, I cried so hard that I lost my tears. Like, there were no more tears. It felt like I was dehydrated. I was in there so long. And surprised the kids didn't wake up through that, because their room was adjacent to the closet. But had a moment, and that was a very difficult night. And then there was that morning, the first thing that morning when the kids woke up. was when he wanted to bring the kids into it and talk with us all. But to just address what you said about, you know, having things in the back of my mind, I think that, you know, again, I've just always been so rooted in faith, Cherrika. I'm talking seriously. Like, once I give something to God, once I give something to God, it is gone.
Wow.
It is gone. And so when I resolve with God that I'm going to give this to you, and I hear you saying that this is what I need to do, I need to be here for my babies, I need to be in this, God, this is on you. This ain't on me, this is on you. So if this happens again, I'm like, you know, I'm done. I'm done.
That
but for now, I'm standing on you.
Wow.
Like, you make this work, right? And so I didn't even, Cherrika, when I tell you no exaggeration, I didn't doubt. I never doubted. When he still had to do things and be on set and I never doubted that he was cheating. I knew he wasn't. I knew with everything.
The level
and
of forgiveness that we need to discuss.
Let me tell you, and if it were not for that 0.001 where you know that nothing is, nothing is resolute 100%. Like, you know that there's always the possibility, because I'm human. I know he's human, but 99.999% sure that my husband would never do anything like that again.
Wow.
And didn't worry about it, didn't think about it, never went through his phone, when he had conversations on the phone with females, never thought that there was anything going on.
Wow.
Ever.
Wow.
I never felt any doubt.
That is forgiveness.
And
this
it's
is
funny.
a lesson on forgiveness. And that is crazy, because this is my video that I posted before this video. It's on forgiveness.
Oh yeah.
This is forgiveness.
And I have to say this, and this is probably TMI, but this might help someone in their relationship, because I want to be full 100 with this.
Mm-hmm.
We've been through a lot since then, but it's never come to my mind racing and thinking that something went on, right? Let me take a step back before I disclose this, but taking a step back. When we were dating in high school, is it still recording? We were dating in high school. I mean, not high school, but in college.
Mm-hmm.
And he had his things going on, and I wasn't even aware of things. I had these small little hints of, him not being faithful when we were kind of, coming up through high school and in our early adult life. But I never knew, like, there were never any true telltale signs. And I went to the clinic. I went to the infirmary on campus my sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was my sophomore year. And when I got my annual exam, she came back and said that I had urethritis. I was ignorant. I didn't know what the heck urethritis was. And she was like, well, and I said, well, how do I get this? I thought it was a urinary tract infection or something similar to that. And she was like, no. She was like, it's an STD. And she was like, are you active? And I was like, yeah, but we're monogamous. Like, it's just the two of us, and we've been in a relationship. She was like, She was like, well, you may want to talk to your partner. And so, and I called him up, and I'm like, what's going on? I have this situation. And he was like, well, nothing's going on with me. Are you sure? Like, what could have caused, he's asking all these questions, eluding me the whole time, right? And I didn't ask enough questions, Cherrika, because I was too sure in that moment. I was too sure. And so I let that go. And then that's kind of what brought on the thinking during that stage in our relationship. Like there could be something else going on. But it never was disclosed to me. I just kind of worked through that, like not making sense of it, not able to really make sense of it. So, present day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Never in our relationship ever had any doubts that anything was going on with my husband. And just 2 days ago, it's interesting that you're here today. 2 days ago, 2 days ago, I have this little like funny sensation going on. I know, I'm telling it.
Oh,
and then I inspect myself, and I got this little bump thing going on, this little tiny bump, and I was like, sir, have you been doing anything? Have you been cheating? Have you slept with anybody else? I'm asking the question, right? Like, what is this? Because I know I've only been with one man in my whole life. wow, like you're bringing that back up. And I was like, no. I said, but in my defense, like I have a right because there's something that links it. And what I was guilty of before was not asking the right questions, not being direct with my thoughts.
So
like if I'm thinking it, I'm gonna ask it.
So
And
now I
so
got to.
25 years of marriage, and it has been 22 years since your infidelity. And this is my first time in our entire marriage
24 years.
bringing it up. And it's because 24. And it's because, you know, it was like, okay, there's this thing, and it had my mind to go somewhere. And it's like, I'm going to ask the question. Although I know, like 99.999, there's that 0.0001%, and I'm going to check on it. I'm going to make sure. Right?
Because we're human, like you said, and we all can fall short. So, yeah, you committed to it and you have changed, and I know that. But unfortunately, when something happens to us, there can be triggers that bring that up, even though you have forgiven this person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not a matter of I'm thinking you're still doing it. It's just that triggered me, and I spoke it out loud.
And I totally understand that, because even back then, you know, she has, although she hasn't checked my phones and done the stuff that maybe the average woman would do, and they get crazy obsessed with watching every step.
Become an investigator, a private investigator.
Yeah. But she's had every right to,
Right.
And I understand that. That's why, I mean, of course, I'm not. I totally understood it and respected it when she asked me that. Didn't feel a certain way, wasn't upset or anything like that, because of course she has that right because of what I did in the past. So that's something that I have to live with and carry with me for the rest of my life.
Exactly. And that's the importance of being a man, understanding when you messed up, and that this mess up may cause me like to have to explain myself some more. Even if it's 25 years, 22 years later, I did it, so that's the repercussions to it. And yes, nobody should throw it up in your face every day, but it may come up, and you gotta understand that.
Well, that's how much this relationship means to me. Back then, I think that sometimes people would rather walk away from a relationship than to face up to their wrongdoings or their transgressions.
Right.
And I cared so much about her and loved her so much and my family, and I wanted what I didn't have in my life. And I was like, there's no way. We had a separation period from 98 to 99 because I was a knucklehead. I sabotaged the relationship just because of that, the infidelity. I was like, would I rather just move on in life and not have to deal with that? Exactly.
That I betrayed her.
It would be easier to maybe move on with it, but I couldn't even think about being without her.
Was too strong.
Exactly.
And typically when the love you have for a person is stronger than you having to just face what you've done, you're gonna go after what you love.
Yeah.
Rightfully so.
So I was questioning that. Should I move on and then just be done with it altogether? That's the easy route in a sense. But for me, of course, it would have been the most painful route, because I would have had
to live with the fact that I really just messed up. Not only did I mess up, I didn't fix it with the one woman that I love, and you wasn't gonna love nobody like you love her.
That, and beyond that, Cherrika, but my children. To imagine them growing up in a world without their father, without me being able to guide them in the right direction, and my girls in particular, telling them what to look out for, and not being able to have 100% participation in their upbringing would have just devastated me. And I just couldn't even imagine. I couldn't even imagine that type of life for them. And so that was huge for me. That pain that I caused her, it devastated me so much to where it caused me some trauma. Nothing close to what it caused her, but I thought I would have understood. And I even discussed that in my book, Cherrika, that
tell them the name of your book.
Blindsided by the Walking Dead. But she wrote that section on where she was talking about her experience and how she felt. She wrote that entire section, and it is very poignant and painful to read, but at the end of the day, like Cherrika said, and Cherrika B Talkin, like she said, it's a major message on forgiveness. And it's the ultimate in forgiveness. And I've spoken on this many, throughout the country, throughout the world.
Because you had to forgive yourself too.
I had to forgive myself.
And that's a hard thing to do. Sometimes it's easier to forgive other people before forgiving ourselves. Especially when we feel like we disappointed ourselves so bad and disappointed people that we love. And people don't talk about that enough.
That's true. That's so true.
But I didn't, it didn't, I thought that, I knew that she, to me, and of course I don't advocate violence or anything like that, but I'm like, if she were to kill me in my sleep, I would have understood.
Wow.
I would have understood. Because, I mean, that was some serious pain. And so that, instead of walking away from the relationship.
Do you feel like the pain, do you feel like you felt her pain? Because I know you didn't feel it in the moment of the act. Do you feel like it was when the confession came that you understood her pain more? Like, wow, like why did, like, is that when you understood her pain? Because we know that most men aren't even thinking and using their side of the brain that women use when in the act, because we can't even imagine. It's almost like we don't even see other men when we're being faithful to one man. So it's like, at what point did you like consider her pain? Like you understood, like, wow, like was it the closet situation?
I felt her pain that last time at the hotel.
It's just something convicted your spirit.
Yeah, I felt her pain that last time, but then even at that level, it was the night I confessed. Just to see how she responded to it. It was unreal. It was just surreal. It was like, oh my God. Just the gravity of it. That's when it really hit me. And so I was like, if I was willing to die that night, I was like, if she does, but of course she's not like that. So she doesn't have a violent bone in her body other than throwing a taco in my face in 97.
He don't want to bring that up. You see?
Look, you needed that taco in your face.
Oh my God.
That is not how it went. That is not how the story unfolded.
Christmas Eve of 97.
That is not it.
Christmas Eve of 97.
We pull up to Taco Bell. We got our baby Heaven in the backseat in her car seat. She's on like 1. We pull up to Taco Bell. After getting our tacos, let me tell you, we were hot with each other that night. We were hot. I don't know what we were debating on, but what I do remember is us going through the drive-thru and arguing about who's in the most accidents or who drives the best or something crazy. And I was just livid with him. And so I'm sitting, he pulls in the parking lot because of course he was driving, so he had the bag of food and he going through the bag of tacos and he gets my tacos and just does like this, Cherrika. He just tosses it. He tosses my taco, girl, and my taco goes all over my lap. It just comes out of the paper all over my lap.
You lucky.
And I just grabbed the taco and just threw it back at him. And it hit him in the face. I can't help.
Right.
Like, you don't initiate stuff like that and expect that you just gonna throw this taco over my lap and it'll be okay. It was not okay. So I did not mean to hit him in the face, but I didn't really honestly care where it went in that
But he
moment.
got what he deserved.
May I pantomime how I tossed the taco? Okay. I tossed the taco like this. She did this. I tossed the taco like that. She had more intent with her taco toss. She said, and I did this and it went in her lap. That was my intention to throw it in her lap. But it wasn't my intention for the taco to come unraveled and spill in her lap. And that wasn't my intention. And so she got that taco.
Had been thrown a little hard for the unravel.
Thank you, Cherrika. The pantomime is not accurate. It's not accurate. It was more of a flick of the wrist. It was a flick.
So that is the extent of her violence. So she didn't have it in her, but based on how she responded that night, I wouldn't have been surprised if it had been conjured up. If I had conjured that up in her just because of my actions.
And it was weighing on you so long anyway. It was just that guilt, like, dang, I deserve something. I deserve punishment. That's probably why you even confess to your children, because what man, just gonna confess it to the children? The children just gotta find out on their own, and they hope they don't find out,
Well, I think, and like, Becky said, I think subconsciously, I was wanting her to feel the what my children would feel. I wanted her to kind of connect with the kids.
So it was
in
part
making
of
her
possibly
decision.
manipulation.
I
of it.
subconsciously, but also, Cherrika, because I knew what God had brought me through in the projects, and you know, having not really having my mom in my life because she was on crack and alcoholic, not having my father in my life at all, and you know, running the streets, selling drugs, living a whole life, and then that level of dysfunction that existed within my home, like, of course it makes sense that I became a product of that. So I wasn't there to make any excuses or anything. It was just that it makes sense how I became the person that I became, but also it made sense given my conscience that I worked towards becoming a better person. But I can't just hold that against me forever either. You know, what I was born into. I was born into that world and I became a product of it. So now what am I going to do to try to fix it? It's on me. I got to be a better person now. All of that stuff that I experienced as a kid, I couldn't get out of it. I wasn't.
I'm grown now.
I'm
What
grown
am I
now.
gonna change?
I got to be grown. I got to do grown man stuff. So it wasn't as hard for me to forgive myself. It wasn't that as hard. But it was more important that my wife forgave me. But it's like I'm on a journey. If she chooses to leave me, I'm going to still move forward to be a better person.
Right.
I screwed this up. The woman of my dream, the woman, my high school sweetheart, I screwed that up. So now I have to live the rest of my life in whatever other relationship that I might be, in. That's gonna always be in the back of my mind, because now, you know, with the one I lost, along with my kids and that whole relationship, that's a lifetime of misery,
Right.
all on its own.
Right.
But at the same time, I was like, I have to be man enough to own it. And I'm so glad that, you know, she forgave me and I didn't have to live this alternate life.
Do you think, other than like, of course your environment, you was a product of your environment, but you decided to overcome your environment and create your own self and your own identity for your own future and for your children and who you are today? Do you think there are, because as men, everybody knows men can struggle in the cheating area. Do you think that there are like tips or pointers you have for men, like just controlling themselves or controlling that lust or redirecting your attention that keeps you faithful?
Okay.
That's a great question.
I know, Cherrika be
That's a
talking.
great
Cherrika be
question.
talking. My God, now to be talking, y'all. Y'all hear me? I said right now, I was just saying this yesterday, I think, right, Bink? I said I'm 50. So it made me realize that it's not about, we've heard the expression, you need to start thinking with that big head, not that little head. Well, it's actually the opposite. It's like we need to start thinking with that little head, not the big head, because at 50, ain't really no desire like that other than for my wife. Like, that desire doesn't exist that way until the mind says, hey, oh, look at that right there. Look at that big boy. Look at it.
Yeah.
The mind starts talking to you, and then it communicates with that part of you. That blood starts stimulating down there, and then you get an arousal or whatever. So I was like, I think the expression should be start thinking with your little head instead of your big head. But that's as you get older.
Yeah.
At 50 years old,
Right.
for sure, because, but then even when you're younger though, if young people didn't have that to affect them that way, like that lust, it starts in the mind. They think that it doesn't start with the penis. It's PG 13, but it doesn't start with the penis, it starts in the mind. So you have to work on controlling the mind first. You control that mind. But then if
when you're younger, control that mind, and when you're older, you just it's like you shouldn't even be wanting to cheat. What you doing? Like, are you battling with your sexuality or something? You know, like we see a lot of older men in the news and stuff. We like, what are you doing? How are you even lasting? Like, what is your issue internally? You know.
Yes. Here's the thing. Ultimately, it's at the end of the day. You know, my philosophy is truth and love. It boils down to truth and love. You know, do we want to be better individuals? For me, if I love this woman, okay, the expression is truth and love. It's like truth without love is aimless or ineffective at best, and love without truth is false. So all those years that I was being unfaithful, it was like, oh, I say I love my girlfriend, then my wife, but if I love her, why am I out here cheating. I'm lying by omission.
Mm-hmm.
I'm lying by omission. So how can I really say I love her? And that was the thing that was really affecting me because God gave me this philosophy. Like,
that's
okay,
the important part. I'm glad you said that. You said God.
yeah,
Because I
yeah.
believe that's the one thing that can transform a man from the seriousness of a covenant and just believing in something higher than yourself and knowing that this is God's daughter. And if I hurt her, like you said, I'm not being truthful with her. If I claim to love her, how am I cheating on her? And that's the one thing I think that a lot of people that possibly never stop cheating don't have, and that's God.
Oh yeah.
Because you gotta, it comes to a point where even if you're seeing a big butt or something, you're a man, you might look, but to act on things, you gotta be like, not only am I gonna hurt her, but God is watching me.
Yes.
You know,
Right.
it's something higher than yourself.
Here's the thing. The silver lining in my mother's death. My mother died May 9th, 1993. And I was in the room that I claimed at that time in the projects, crying and angry and hurt and wanted to go out and hurt somebody else. And that was a tough moment. Like I said, outside the projects, that was the most painful moment of my life, right? And so my mom being a crack addict and an alcoholic, I said, I know my mom was born to do more than this.
Mm-hmm.
Society would see her as a crack addict and an alcoholic. But my mom was, when she wasn't on drugs and when she wasn't drinking, she was awesome. I love my mom. I always wanted to be around my mom and under my mom and all of that. And so I wanted to do justice for my mom. God told me at that time when I had an epiphany. And the entire room lit up, Cherrika, and the epiphany was from God said it lit up like a scene from Malcolm X when Malcolm X was in prison. He had that moment, I had that moment. And God was like, well, in order to make it count, you should still be here because I didn't want to live anymore. I didn't care if I killed somebody, if somebody killed me. I was just angry. I was angry, confused, whatever. And I said that, and God said that, well, you're supposed to be here. You have work to do. Your mission, if you want to make the most of your mom's, her existence, her presence, her life, and honor her, you give everybody you meet truth and love. You respect everybody you come into contact with. You have to become a better person. You have to stop cheating. You have to do all the bad stuff. You have to do that, and in turn, you would, honor your mom. You will honor me. You will honor humanity, and that was the path I was on. And so, of course, it all started with that. Not just a spark.
Because you were mentioning God, and I'm like, that's the important part. That's that key. That is what, that belief is what matters.
People say.
Mickey was about to say something when you was, I forgot what it was at one point before the story about the apartment. Gosh.
What I did want to add, if I may, because I certainly don't understand fully the mind of a man and what drives you all to do certain things, but what I have found for myself personally, and I have to give credit to Kashayla, a cousin of ours, who I was talking with her. We were being long-winded through our voice messaging the other day, and one of the things that she said, because she is she's a Christian woman, she's probably a little bit older. I think she was like, what is she?
31,
33, something like that, 32, 33. And she's single, and she's, on this path of just trying to, just understand herself and just kind of walk with Christ and just kind of understand, how to navigate this world before really committing herself to anything seriously. And she was saying, because we were talking about working out and we were talking about the Tough Mudder and all of these things, she was like, oh, I would love to do that. And I was telling her, because she was asking me about training and how I tried. I was like, I was not trained like I needed to be for that thing. I said, but I did start running, and I never loved running, period. Like, running has never been my thing. And I said, but because I knew I was about to do a 15K, it's like, I gotta run, because I gotta get through this race. Like, how am I gonna survive if I've never run before? So I started running with Heaven, and we did 2 miles a couple times. And then the week of, I got on the treadmill and ran 2 miles one day. And for the first time, I think I may have warmed up. I did 0.5 miles, and then I ran the rest of the way. And for the first time in my life, I felt runner's high. I don't know if you've ever felt
when
that.
you start running and you can keep going like that.
Well,
that when you hit that second wind.
When you hit that place to where you feel no pain. You're breathing normally, like you're walking, and you feel literally. I felt high. I felt like I had like induced something that had put me on cloud nine.
Wow.
It was truly a feeling of like an out of body experience.
Wow.
It was like I was running on clouds. It was that feeling. And I had never felt that way before in my life. And I was like, okay, I can do this forever. Gym was closing. I was like, okay, I get my 2 miles in. I got off the treadmill, Cherrika, and it felt like I couldn't really hear anything. It was like my vision was pure. My breathing was clear. I didn't even feel my legs. It was kind of like I was just floating out of the gym. And I was like, this is the most amazing feeling ever.
Wow.
Right? And then I did it again, like a couple days later, and I ran almost 3 miles, and I felt it again. It was the best feeling, like the best natural feeling I have ever felt in my life.
It was there.
I was even telling Rob that it felt like, you know, even driving home, like I'm a speeder. I got a heavy foot. So it don't even matter if I'm not in a hurry. I'm speeding everywhere I go. And I was just chill. You know, and I've never smoked weed before. But if I had to guess how it feels
it would be
when you are smoking weed, I would say that runner's high is the absolute same. And when I looked it up, it's actually true.
Wow.
That it actually creates the same chemicals in your body. It taps into those same natural chemicals, right? And so back to what, because Shayla was saying when we were talking about all of this, dopamine, what she was saying was that, you know, she has been celibate for like 2 years now, almost. And she was saying a lot of people, because she works out often as well, and she was like, what most people don't understand is that when you feel like you're craving having sex, it's really your body craving needing to work out and exert some energy in a different way. And she was like, when I work out, and you know, because I'm so consistent, those feelings are not there as much as they used to be. Wow. And she was like, I think that our bodies have a way of producing the chemicals that we need to satisfy our cravings.
Wow.
I was like, that's pretty deep,
so that working out helps her.
Helps her.
That's good
It
to
helps
know
her.
because I know I've read something where they said people that work out and are athletes have a higher sex drive. So
really?
Yeah, I've heard that.
Wow.
So maybe working. When they get them thoughts, they need to work out.
They need to work out some more.
Yeah, work out some more.
I don't know.
Go to the gym.
And you know, I guess that saying goes that everybody's body chemistry is different.
Yeah,
and what works for one person may not work for another, you know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I just want to kind of just add those two things together because for me, you know,
working
feeling
out.
that runner's high is just like on a whole nother level of, okay, this is definitely a nice sedative, a nice way to feel, you know,
to feel
calm and absolutely.
And to not want to get your mind distracted because also working out is productive too. So they say an idle mind is the devil's workshop.
True.
So it's a lot of times when you fall into sin is when you're not doing nothing or your mind is just wandering.
Absolutely. So keeping a hobby, being involved in sports or activities or something that keeps you too busy to
even think about stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
But isn't that all godly?
It is.
Right?
It is.
Indulging in those positive activities or whatnot. That's connecting with God.
Yep. Well, thank y'all for tuning in to this episode. We had
Cherrika B
guests,
Talkin.
and we learned a lot today. And don't get blocked in my comments saying the wrong
Oh my
word.
God.
But y'all know I'll be back because I'll be talking.
Cherrika B Talkin.
Cherrika B Talkin, guys. Truth and love.